if you go back 10 years before, you could just change your API to a data center proxy, clean your cookies, log into Facebook. Those were the good times. Yeah. But now, employing fingerprint techniques, they can identify you without cookies, without the IP address, that this user has the same device ID by using a couple of...
What's going on, everyone? Super excited to have you here with us. We're going live in our free Facebook group. You're probably watching the replay on YouTube, which is totally cool. I have the long-awaited call with Multilogin. I have my friend Stan on the line with us today. He's going to be answering some of the biggest questions that now not just affiliate marketers, e-commerce guys, dropshippers, pretty much anyone that runs Facebook ads needs a software exactly like theirs to solve the never-ending problem of Facebook basically being a broken system. Whether you're using it for ethical or unethical purposes at this point, doesn't even matter. Anyone that needs to run Facebook ads basically needs something like this. So Stan, why don't you give yourself a better introduction, brother?
Hey guys, happy to talk with you. Awesome that we are here. So John has prepared some questions. I'd be happy to answer them. We've been on the market for over 5 years. And actually, when we created Multilogin, we initially didn't know what it will be used for. And then we are the very first type of customer that uses Multilogin, which we identified was Facebook advertisers. So during these 5 years, we've been very closely talking with Facebook, with people who are running Facebook ads, and altering and trying to understand how Facebook thinks, and trying to understand what actually triggers it and why does it ban accounts, and why does it do that. So I'm super excited today. I'm always happy to share information. We research browser fingerprints on a very low level by checking what actual fingerprints Facebook gathers, what it analyzes. And we also take a very close relationship with people who are running Facebook ads and are very, very successful with it. So absolutely stoked to be here.
Awesome, man. What inspired you guys to originally create the software years ago? Because I've seen your original YouTube videos they've been sitting there on the tutorials and instructions for years now.
So what expired, we actually, at that time, there were some similar solutions like that. However, these solutions, they were very difficult to set up. You had to know, you had to know a lot. You had to possess a very deep understanding of different parameters the browser has. Then you had to basically go through hoops to understand how to even set up a proxy. And we couldn't use that software. We actually wanted to try it out. We actually wanted to try to set up multiple accounts, to send ads to a couple of agencies that we were working for. And at that time, we just understood it was impossible. So we created kind of our own proof of concept. It started to work, and we decided to share this application to everybody, and we didn't know who would use it. We actually thought, we are just the only ones. And then it started to get traction, people started to use it, and then we understood, okay, there's actually people who are using this for Facebook ads. Oh, that's cool, and so awesome. And we just continued to focusing on that, focusing on development itself, product development, improvements, and that's been a long journey so far.
You know, it reminds me of, I'm not sure if you're much in the attribution space, but Alex Becker developed Hyros. Hyros, I believe it is, probably I think 2 years ago at this point. And it's funny because I don't think he predicted iOS becoming a big issue or becoming a problem. So it was almost like he developed the software that was great for the time, but it's like it was the perfect time for today, right? It sounds like you guys developed the software intentionally but unintentionally years ago, and here we are in 2021 where it's impossible to use a regular computer for Facebook, and you guys are in the perfect place at the perfect time, right?
Well, Alex is also good at predicting crypto. Not sure how he's good at predicting that.
it's like the Simpsons. They predict the future, right?
So, yes. Maybe.
Yeah, cool, man. So what who would this software be perfect for? Because I know probably half my audience is well aware, half of them are probably users. But who else would your software be perfect for today, and why?
Well, pretty much what we see before what we saw is that users would go into various groups. There will be Facebook advertisers, there will be eBay and Amazon sellers. That's pretty much where the main focus. We had some customers for LinkedIn that would like to generate leads. However, right now we see that the same people who are doing Facebook ads, they're also doing some e-commerce stuff. Crypto is also a big player in the game right now. And ultimately, it evolves into an industry where you need access to multiple digital identities to basically grow your business, to scale your business. And it's difficult to say what kind of verticals should be used, like you should use Multilogin for. But if you need access and control over multitudes of digital identities, that's where Multilogin can help you with. So particularly for Facebook ads, you would need multiple Facebook ad accounts to scale your business or to diversify risks, for example. And the same logic applies to many other websites where your business is highly dependent on. The same as Amazon, same as eBay, LinkedIn, so on and so forth. I hope this answers.
It does, question. Man. So let's go pretty specific because my audience is mainly probably 60 to 70% e-commerce dropshippers who are going to use multiple profiles, multiple business managers, multiple ad accounts, and then probably 30 to 40% are going to be affiliate marketers doing the same thing. So why is your software necessary for them? Why do they need something like this today?
Yeah, sure. So ultimately, kind of like at some point, you're like how it all starts. You basically have a Facebook account. You set up an ad. You're happy with results. Everything goes good until that day comes, and you understand that you either need to be very meticulous with setting up your ads, or you can just go ahead with going with a simpler approach and having multiple ad accounts. And you could approach it from a risk diversification purposes. So if you're doing it for totally white ads, everything's going to be fine. But even if you're using it for white hat ads, you can get blocked. Typically, if you're sending some affiliate links, I'm sure Facebook doesn't like it, but it also not necessarily always will ban you at the same time. So it's kind of like an area where Facebook say, okay, well, I will not like this user, but I will like this user. And it's very arbitrary logic. You cannot you cannot be totally white and black here. So having this uncertainty in mind, you have to have a way to protect your business, or you have to have a way for your business to grow. And logically, you come to a conclusion that you need access to multiple Facebook ad accounts. And that's where it's needed.
What do you believe at this point today is triggering Facebook? Because I have conversations every single day with at least 10 to 15 new people where they're saying, hey, I'm following policy. I'm using my real profile. It's ID confirmed. I've spent $1 million in the last 12 months without any violations, and now I'm restricted. Help. What do I do? Why? What are your beliefs or any insights you have into what's causing this?
So the biggest part of how Facebook decides whether it's bad or a good account is its behavioral data. And this behavioral data is it's put into neural networks, and they kind of predict the risk of a specific account. And even normal actions will trigger a neural network to say that the user is bad. And really, like when you ask me this question, I really don't know, because even Facebook doesn't know how their neural networks work. The best way to avoid here is to kind of try to attempt to be as normal as possible. Like blend in within the crowd. Do not attempt to be a purple cow. To become an advertiser, like become an advertiser that everybody is.
So a combination of watching cat videos in your newsfeed and then also advertising. That's really the balance, right?
Yeah, that's really the balance. Also, there are, if, for example, you need access to multiple Facebook accounts, then kind of like the triggers then can be identified. Then they can be identified. In some sense, you can even arrive to a specific list of checks or browser fingerprint checks or IP checks that it checks for. And now, one of the biggest triggers for Facebook, as I know, and according to our research, it's the usage of data center proxies. And data center proxies are sometimes also used for like normal legitimate purposes, like you're sitting under a VPN, and that's data center. You're connected to your company's corporate network. That's sometimes can be a data center IP. So that can trigger. Also, one thing I know is that the usage of extensions, just normal browser extensions like Grammarly, they alter your browser fingerprint slightly. And these changes can sometimes be interpreted by website as being something that as being something that you're hiding something.
Interesting. You know, it's funny you say that data center proxies can be an issue, because I've tested this actually with probably over 1,000 Facebook profiles in the last 12 months. And I've used Bright Data, which was Illuminati prior, which is gets very expensive. You're paying by the gigabyte, you know, whether you do mobile or residential. And I found that actually for a cost-effective purpose, using my private proxy, which is probably data center, even though they say it's residential, let's be honest. I found that the only difference that between the two usages with residential or mobile with Bright Data versus using data center is actually that the first login attempt is more difficult. So once you're actually past the security checkpoint of the login with data center, you really don't have any uncommon issues that you wouldn't find with Bright Data, which is super interesting. You know, because it does make sense.
That's very true.
Using residential should theoretically be better because it looks more real, but it's just interesting that that's really the main problem we found with it.
Well, you see, you have to take a look. You have to know two things, and this will explain this whole experience that you have. First of all, when websites they gather fingerprints or analyze your IP or everything and everything else, in order to deploy fingerprint techniques, they have to increase the latency of their website. So the website will load longer. What do you think? Is Facebook interested in that? Like, they directly know that if the web page loads longer, the user experience will go down. So they have to selectively decide where to deploy these browser fingerprinting techniques. And logically, like, where would the attempt be? At the login page, at the registration page, at the payment attachment step, or Facebook ad creation. That's the area where we are fine to load it much more longer, a bit more longer. And that's where they can employ these more advanced techniques.
Can you define fingerprint for our listeners? Because I'm sure not everyone that really understands what that means.
Yeah, sure. So a browser fingerprint is just a set of parameters. Yes, it's like, so I'm talking to you and I see you have green eyes, you have in the background, you have white wall, and I have identified you but basically by looking at you. And the website does the same. Whenever you connect to a website, it retrieves some information about you. It is possible to do more actively or more passively, but it's just a set of parameters. For example, the website can see your real operating system. The website can even see the list of your fonts that you have installed on your computer. They can also understand, for example, what programs you have installed. We actually confirmed that Facebook were scanning for different programs that are installed, and they're checking whether you have TeamViewer installed, whether you have AnyDesk installed, and they employ a very unethical tactic because essentially port scanning is illegal in Germany, for example. But the way they do it is kind of like a gray hat method. It's not illegal, but is it ethical to scan the ports of a user? Like this is like back in the 20,000s when back in the 20,000s where websites were scanning for ports to find different vulnerabilities and the ways how to hack into your computer. So it's like, what the heck? And one of the key, like even Facebook can understand, or any website can understand the video card that you have installed, the name of the video card. And you see and parameters are different. There's a lot of parameters. We don't not need to go into detail right now, but these parameters are things that can specifically identify you, even if you remove cookies or you change IP address. They can, to a specific degree, they can understand that it's the same user coming with the same fingerprint. So how it worked before, like maybe if you go back 10 years before, you could just change your IP to a data center proxy, clean your cookies, log into Facebook. Those were the good times. Yeah. But now, employing fingerprint techniques, they can identify you without cookies, without the IP address, that this user has the same device ID by using a couple of parameters. Now, I'm not saying that device ID is like a very good way to track, but it's like the principle that how fingerprint detection works. I hope that helps clarify. Fingerprints are just parameters like that describe your computer and your browser.
So how deep does your software go in blocking a lot of this information from getting shared? Because I'd imagine, great, we use different proxies for different browser sessions. That's obvious, right? But if you're telling me that Facebook is going 10 levels past that, does your software cut them off at some point, or what's the difference it's really making?
Yeah, really good question. So, like, logically thinking, like the logical conclusion to this would be to like mask everything at the most deepest levels, mask everything or block everything. But the thing is that if you start blocking everything, Facebook can see that it's not normal user behavior, and instead they will block you. The key here is to actually mask only those parameters which are important. For example, when you change an IP address, along with changing the IP address, also your time zone on the system should be also changed in correspondence to that. And that's what Multilogin does. Also, just by changing an IP address, there's other ways how Facebook can check whether you're not lying about your IP address. So that part is called WebRTC, and Multilogin ensures that it's changed. So Multilogin doesn't really like change. Yes, it changes most of the fingerprints that we know, but we are very careful in masking most of them, because ultimately the approach that you have to take is just you need to mask only those parameters that are needed. Because if you go too deep, then it might just trigger additional warnings. Like quick example, even let's say you change fonts. I said in Multilogin you can change fonts, but if you changed fonts without using Multilogin, then you might add a font which is from Windows, but you're actually coming from Mac. And Facebook will see this inconsistency. And we know Facebook enumerates for fonts. So and then if we understand that most of the users have a specific set of fonts, then our idea is to blend in within the crowd, provide variety, but at the same time, the correct variety. We don't need to change everything for Facebook to not know. We just need to change it in the right places and to make it consistent with other parameters. That's the key thing. That's the very crucial part. And before in those solutions that I talked about before Multilogin, there were some solutions to mask fingerprints. These solutions, they changed everything. And at that time it worked. And and we actually also masked everything maybe 4 years ago. And that worked also. But then websites started to become smarter, and they started to cross-check these parameters. And that's when the problems occurred. So currently, right now, the best strategy is to blend in within the crowd.
So let me ask you this. I'm sure you're aware of many of your competitors. This is a growing space now, especially with Facebook problems. So let's use one, for example, not to pick on one, but this is a common one I get asked about: incognition. So obviously they have a lower barrier because they start with a free plan. They get more people in. It's a different audience for sure. Probably not always less sophisticated, but typically more sophisticated people in the space are going to go to you because you're the best, right? You're the original. So what's the difference between your software and one like incognition that presents itself as being very similar?
Well, I would really suggest, first of all, and I'm not trying to bash, if they're doing great work and providing value to users, actually they're growing, they're making the industry better and growing it. And competition is always good because it gets us up on our feet to try and understand what we can do better, what we can do more efficiently. And actually, there are more competitors coming out which are similar to Multilogin. And it made us as a company, as a product to become more efficient at things that we do. So great thanks to them. But first thing, I would say is trust. You can check their interface and maybe make your own conclusions where this interface was taken from. Or maybe they're very creative. But ultimately, how we try to diversify and what we focus on in our strategy is that we always make our own research about what fingerprints we should change. And we always provide the best settings out of the box based on our research. And if you want to have just a solution that is always up to date to the latest findings, I personally would recommend Multilogin because I know how it works there. Furthermore, we are more and more focusing on. We are very heavily focusing on stability. Actually, you might say stability. What about it? But if you check most of the competitors, this is one of the things that you have to focus. The way how these browser profiles are open and manipulated and worked, they bring a lot of instability. So we're really focused on the data that you have in your browser profiles. And this information is stored very securely. Also, I would like to point out, check whether your data is encrypted or not with any of the solutions that you're using. And a simple way to do that is, can you reset your password and get access to your profiles? If you can reset, then it means there's no encryption. Private keys are stored on their servers. And if police sometimes knocks on their doors, this data will go there. With us, everything is encrypted, and anybody who gets access to this will just find gibberish, nothing.
I can vouch for that, man. I had to reset my password once, and
oh my god, and it's not good for usability. Yes, it's not good. It's horrible. But we just have to make a decision here. We just have to make a decision here. Yes. So. And I know what's the pain, man. I also had multiple times. I actually had 2 times when I lost my password, and we use Multilogin daily also within the company, and data was lost.
Yeah, it's all good, man.
Yeah.
So let's just say someone handed you 10 proxies, 10 real profiles for Facebook. What are, if you could give general, because I have my own recommendations from first login to conversion based campaigns. What are some of your recommendations you would give step by step? to avoid common triggers with Facebook from going from first login with with a real profile from another user with a clean proxy. What are the step-by-steps you would generally take?
John, is a quick clarification question. Is it, are we talking about newly created accounts or, existing ones?
I'd be interested to hear both, but in this question,
Both.
I was asking about, like, let's say your mom, your sister, your cousin, all
Right.
made new profiles.
Oh, that's a really good thing. So first of all, one thing that you can do is, actually, the very first thing I will talk about, I'm just adding a note because I've just understood that I can add some information to this question. All right. Okay, so one thing that you should think about is the quality of your IP address, and not only thinking strictly residential or strictly data center. Actually, if you're going to commit to a specific IP address, go check it first. There's quite a bit of websites that you can utilize to check if your IP address is, first of all, residential, it's not blacklisted, and it's not identified by popular geo2IP databases as being potentially harmful. They're quite, after this meeting, I actually can share these links if you need, but definitely make an assessment of your IP address. The thing is that when you check for these things, of course, not necessarily this means this is something bad, because even my home IP address shows that it's blacklisted in some databases. It's just like false positives. But ultimately, if you want to be on the safe side, you would rather not want it to be on the blacklist.
It's more of a best practice than a black or white yes or no.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you have an IP address, then you can go ahead to create a browser profile in Multilogin. The very first thing in the creation step is that you have to totally forget about creating virtual browser profiles with virtual OS. And what I mean by that, when you go to create a profile, you have the option to create a profile for Windows, for Mac, for Linux, and for mobile. You should strictly focus on creating that profile on the operating system that you're using. So if you're sitting on Mac, create a profile for Mac. If you're sitting on Windows, make a Windows profile. Because it's very, very easy for websites to understand if the virtual OS is used. And we even have an article on our blog page. It's just the possibilities are endless how you can identify that. And these checks are very fast to employ. And eBay and Amazon surely does that.
So this is this could be, it's not so much like this is a yes or no for Facebook, but it could be a potential trigger. Correct?
Actually, this is more or less yes. This is more or less yes or no, especially for the registration stages. Yes, for registration stages and so on. Actually, John, to be honest, I am not sure. I know that many systems employ this tactic, and I know that Facebook gathers fonts. And if they gather fonts, they should be able to know this information. That's why I think it's important. But ultimately, for example, it might not really matter when you're just warming up the account already, when it's created, when it's logged in, it might not matter. But on registration page, you should see an increase in, let's say, success rates. You should be able to see that.
Specific to brand new accounts I create today, yes. Not specific to my mom's profile I log in with.
It's both.
Okay.
Actually both. It's actually both, yes. And so the next step would be probably if you have this profile ready, you could also experiment with a couple of settings, but if that's okay, maybe we can talk about best practices a bit later. I have three of them that I can talk about. So that's pretty much it. You have a profile. Now you can decide whether it's a new account or is it, let's say, your mom's account. So very first thing that you should do is if your mom is using a desk, if she's browsing on her Macintosh, if she's using this Facebook account on her Mac, then try to export her cookies and then import her cookies into your browser profile. And this will be almost automatically logged in without the need to log in with her credentials. And you basically bypassing all the checks. So this would be one of the best ways to do that. The way to do that is that your mom would have to install an extension called cookie export. You would export that data and then use Multilogin inbuilt cookie import feature to import these things. Now you can actually go a step more, like a step further here. You can even copy her user agent or parameters and try to emulate those settings inside the browser profile. You can do that also. That would bring more security. However, what we know, it doesn't really matter. You can actually just, at this point, you can just import cookies and that's it.
Now, what about, so I'd imagine next you're going to say cookie robot is the next thing, right?
Yes, cookie robot would be for new accounts primarily. And the reason why it kind of like it's needed is that Facebook has like Facebook pixels installed almost everywhere. You advertisers and marketers, you've placed it everywhere. I'm not blaming you, okay? But it's everywhere, okay? It's everywhere. And as a result, Facebook can remember that user, even not having an account. And here, most importantly, is not usually the amount of crawling that you did, but usually it's more important the aging of that cookie. What I mean by that, you have scenario A, where you like maybe use cookie robot for maybe 10 hours and go to create an account straight away. And you have scenario B, where you crawled it for maybe 10 minutes, close the profile, and maybe in a couple of days or weeks, go ahead to create an account. Scenario B will work better because these cookies are aged. It's kind of, they already trust this data. There is a user like this. We have had this user for quite some time in our database. Okay, we'll let him pass or her.
Is it possible to generate old cookies, as silly as that sounds?
Yeah, so ultimately, so cookies are like, it's like I have a sticky note, yes, and I will write here John, and then John again. I'll give you my version of John's sticky note, and I'll keep mine. And I will always be able to identify you. So generating them will not work because I won't have that sticky note. I will not have a counterpart of your cookie. So it's practically not possible. Maybe it's somewhat possible to do cookie robot, for example, on a data center IP address. Maybe that would work. But remember also, like whenever you're going to a specific website and Facebook like tries to create a profile about you, they also can track your user agent and IP address at that time. However, we don't think at this point in time, this is really relevant. They just check if there is a cookie. Generating cookie is not possible because if you generate a cookie, just like write a cookie, then Facebook at that time will not have a counterpart. They will just say, oh, I see some cookies, but I don't have these cookies in my database. So like, what is that?
Makes sense. Cool. So at this point, you're logging in now. And what's our next step?
Well, to be honest, I'm also a bit stuck there. At this point, what I can say is behavioral analysis. And I know that there are a couple of like ways how to. So yes, the next step, you basically logged in or you created an account, and the next step is you would you probably do all that warm-up stuff. You would upload a picture, you would verify it with a phone number, which could give some bonus points. But one thing for sure, what we can't talk about is behavioral analysis. There is a thing so-called typing DNA or typing DNA. And what they do is they make a profile of how you type. Ultimately, and this can be used to a specific to some degree of precision to understand whether you are the same person. Like some advice would be here, maybe to try to make some spaces sometimes between these letters. That's only talking about browser fingerprints, and at this point, I think I don't have a lot of value to offer at this point. What to do actually next over there? Maybe you have any specific questions. But what I can tell here is that if you let this account age a bit, like you don't go straight away to adding friends or like doing some warm-up process. It's just to give some time to age, 2 to 3 days, and doing like all stuff after that. This should increase success rates.
So would this set you up for success going into advertising, or would you say that's a whole nother process in itself? Because that's why I do a lot of experimenting is if I create a business manager on day 4 versus day 5, if I make an ad account on day 6 versus day 7, like that's where we do, and that's always changing too, right? So the patterns we found 1 month ago, 3 months ago, are very different than what we find today.
Well, unfortunately, I cannot really comment on that. Like, to be honest, here, what we ultimately can do is, since it's such a black box, what I know for sure is that Facebook and Google, they have their own cycles where they are, like, let's say when they are upset at everybody, when they block everybody. And these are like, I'm not sure why, but it's very visible by when we talk to users. We see just some like spikes that no matter what you do, no matter how well you manage them, there will be some point in time where there will be bans. That we know for sure. However, for exact things inside accounts, not sure if I can help, to be honest.
All good, man. Appreciate the honesty.
I should have better prepared. I can like maybe gather some information, but at this point
I'm testing a lot, so I'm always happy to share what I'm finding. Something a common question I get actually is, does proxy location in comparison to profile city, how much does that matter? Because from my experimenting, theoretically, a profile from Washington, D.C. will be best with a Washington, D.C. proxy. I've experimented, for example, I live in Washington, D.C. I'll receive a profile from Australia. I'll use a residential proxy from Russia. And I don't see anything different in that scenario versus Washington, D.C. profile, Washington, D.C. proxy, and then I'm in Washington, D.C. What are your thoughts on this?
So if we do not talk about Facebook, if we talk about just systems that kind of detect browser fingerprints and check for proximities, then it matters. It definitely matters. It's one of the key points how they assess, how credit card processors assess risks. This is one of the things that they do for sure. However, your experience is also in line with us. We've also, I think the main idea is to have an aged account with a lot of behavioral data. And then whatever like proxy you add, I mean, as long as it's like not blacklisted by every major like blacklisting database, it should be fine. We've also had this experience. We also test, we talk with users, and many just like say that, no, I use this account for 10 years and I'm using this data center proxy. Why are you suggesting me to buy an expensive bright data proxy? And that's true. That's absolutely true. You cannot deny that. Like most of our also work and how we help users is we mainly focus on just providing the best possible natural settings with key differences in browser profiles, and encourage experimentation as much as possible. Testing. It so much goes down into testing. Those users who test, they are successful, they grow. Those who are not, they usually can stagnate. It's just like this. This is the key. Like you can go ahead and try to find what they are doing, but it's always changing, and you cannot really like say, oh, you should be like that, because then when you apply this scheme or process to somebody else, then it will be totally different. The results will be totally different. Even the same proxies, it's just will be different.
It's crazy.
I know that. Yes, one thing I know for sure is that like browser fingerprinting methods sometimes may vary across regions. So, for example, in Russia, they kind of like if the account is coming from Russia, for example, and that's what we've learned, risks can be higher than, for example, from the United States. And I know that many people are actually creating proxies from Estonia, because there's not a lot of affiliate marketers in Estonia, and hence like Facebook is just totally okay with this. And this is very also interesting. I highly urge you to try this also at home. And this has been for quite some time a very interesting phenomenon. What some users do is they create profiles with PlayStation user agent or with PlayStation fingerprints, like PlayStation, and it works.
From the system itself, or from like PlayStation.com, they generate the.
So you open a browser in the PlayStation, you take a user agent. User agent is just a fingerprint, just parameter. You copy it to the browser profile Multilogin and then try to launch your ad. Just try it, because it's so ridiculous that for some it works. And it's also very important. It's region specific. But the thing is that why it happens is because Facebook relies heavily on neural networks. And when neural networks cannot process some data, they usually do not output any result. So just by being a purple cow, sometimes it also can like make you very
trustworthy, like, kind of, or yes. Under the radar.
Yes.
I've tried a lot of things, brother. I've got these here. I got a few extra of these. Mm-hmm. I don't want to say I've tried everything, but I've tried a lot of things, and it's super mm-hmm. interesting. I found when it comes to creating new profiles that mm-hmm. definitely iPads do not work. Computers, you can maybe make one or two even with a new device. Cell phones, mm-hmm. for some reason, just have more trust. It seems like with Facebook, it's easier mm-hmm. to make profiles, but even still, mm-hmm. it's a lot of work. It's a lot of time to make a brand new profile.
Yes.
I've tried actually making new profiles on Multilogin on the Proxy.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't really work. Mm-hmm. It's super low success rate. Mm-hmm. Just it's very interesting mm-hmm. to see. It's like what you're saying, and I think this is really important for our listeners mm-hmm. to understand too. Mm-hmm. You're not promising this perfect silver bullet that's going to solve every problem. Mm-hmm. You're promising a vehicle that's going to give the best opportunity to create the mm-hmm. conditions to show Facebook what they want to see. Right?
Yes, absolutely. That's the core of our product. And just around that, we just want to give you some productivity tools to help you work with them. So you can share this to your team members, so you can effectively launch them from everywhere you would like, and kind of make your life more easier on that part.
Random question. So with all mm-hmm. this talk of proxies and how websites treat mm-hmm. Different location users differently. So mm-hmm. I know this is pretty mm-hmm. common with flights, right? Like making flight purchases. So have you seen this? Have you seen it where like if you use proxies from, I don't know, the Philippines, and you compare mm-hmm. the flight price, do you see that they actually receive a different cost for the user mm-hmm. from a different proxy location than a US location, for example?
I know for sure this works. Why this works? Because there are some people who are using Multilogin to get that information. Also, I personally before was trying to book a ticket to Turkey, and I booked a ticket by going to like Turkish VPN and getting a price which is 50% less. So that's my personal experience. But they do, yes. It's undisputable fact that they do it.
It's kind of price discrimination,
Mhm.
but it's not really, because you could argue it both ways. It just makes sense, right? Because they're not going to buy if it's just if it's a 1 month salary or whatever. It just doesn't make sense.
Mhm. Yeah.
So last a few questions. First, what are some other interesting uses you found your users have, like kind of like the flight example? What other fun kind of interesting use cases have you found? And where's Multilogin going into 2022, 2023? What are your plans?
Yeah, good question. And we are actually in the process of planning and setting ourselves to a specific vertical, to a specific strategy. So we are expanding our R&D department, and our R&D department in Multilogin specifically focused on understanding what will trigger a warning or what will not. We've had this before, but now we are kind of like making a more bigger approach towards that, where the team will be expanded and where we will specifically focus on a more global approach rather than to specific use cases. And we think that by applying a more global approach, this can help just more users. If you apply a more global approach, you will see similarities. And the thing is that if you're only specifically orientated to Facebook, for example, or eBay and Amazon, as you are not aware of other possibilities. So that's we think that this strategy will make us be more ahead of the game, and the browser profiles with the settings will be, let's say, more consistent. With the product itself, we are moving towards providing more value for you to be able to grow faster. We kind of want to give you more opportunities to create profiles faster. We want to provide you more value to kind of import those cookies also faster. And ultimately, what we want to do at some point is we would like to provide specific settings based on the use case that you're working. So if it's working for Facebook, then actually it's already working. It just needs to be, currently we already have optimization settings which are tailored to specific verticals. But in 2020, we would like to more focus on actually adding more of those specificities to your use cases. So right now, kind of this all works under the hood. We know that Facebook tracks one parameter, and we kind of in a hidden way, we alter it so it works better for our users. But in 2020, you might see some actually changes in the browser profile setting themselves. There was some other question.
Any fun use cases, like the flight example?
Fun use cases. Yeah, another use case I know of, the crypto space is booming, and one of the things that users are utilizing is they are checking for these are like centralized crypto lotteries where you can get a job, and they use Multilogin to get a higher chance of a job. So that's a potential use case. Other than that, we also focused quite a bit on a use case where scraping is involved, where we help companies to scrape data. E-commerce is becoming quite big. More and more websites appear where you can post your product. So that part is quite often, and we also see quite an increase of users who are using it for LinkedIn. Like high ticket sales, generating leads by the way of having multiple opportunities to reach more people.
Yep. One last technical question. So I know for a while I used to use a VPN to log into different Facebook accounts, but that actually became like a big trigger, a security trigger for Facebook, and this is 2019. So I know some other guys that use Multilogin, multiple profiles, similar setups, and they say they swear you need a VPN. I would love to hear your thoughts, and maybe you could educate me on the difference between VPN, VPS, and if it's necessary with your software at all.
So do I understand correctly that these people, they run VPN and then run multiple accounts on the same VPN
and
server?
Multilogin. So they turn on their VPN, then they open Multilogin.
And do they use proxies or no?
With proxies, yes.
With proxies, well, the reason why they would want to do that is proxies do not encrypt your traffic unless it's a really very well configured SOCKS proxy. But ultimately, most of SOCKS proxies and HTTP proxies, they do not encrypt your traffic. So they might use VPN to, first of all, like encrypt their data. That's the first thing. And the second thing, using a VPN can help them stick to a specific IP address. And if your proxies are authenticated by an IP address, this can make it stick. Other implications, I would think that it might be related to privacy concerns, like somewhat there's some fingerprint nobody knows about and VPN covers that. I do not know, to be honest.
Is it necessary?
Is it necessary? We never like specifically advise to use VPN.
What about VPS?
So VPS is a virtual private server. Yes, so it's VPS is a server that you can connect remotely. Some users may want to use VPS and launch Multilogin over there. And especially if you're working in a team, imagine that, for example, John, you have a virtual assistant who is in Philippines. You're using a MacBook, correct? Right now you're sitting from MacBook, yes? And your virtual assistant in Philippines, for example, or it doesn't matter, just any virtual assistant has Windows. And you're creating accounts, or you're like preparing these accounts, and then you pass it over to a different person. The thing is that if that person makes a very key action, like attaching payment methods or something else, then the difference in browser fingerprint between Windows and Mac can be a trigger. But if you're managing everything from a VPS, then and always launching profiles from a VPS, these fingerprints remain consistent. That's why it might be good. And I also know some users also get better success rates when they are using VPS. I've also heard about that. Yes. But not necessary. But that will be not necessary again. We are constantly talking with users. We also have a couple of teams who are also doing Facebook ads, and we are constantly talking, and we understand what kind of processes lead to bans. And they don't use VPS, and they're very successful affiliate marketer in Russia, for example, and they don't need a VPS. They don't need a VPN. They just have a couple of best practices that they know, which I also talked about, and you also covered, for example, creating an account on a phone.
Yep.
Stuff like that.
So, side question: go back to our discounted flights. Does the proxy have the same same effect as doing like a VPN or a VPS?
Proxy has an advantage. If proxy, you can use unique proxies per profile. So each of your profile. Each profile that you create will have a unique IP address, which kind of makes this browser profile more distinct from each other. But I would imagine the reason why it would work why VPN would work, is because whenever you connect to a VPN, you're ultimately sharing that IP address with many other people, even normal folks. And that's why maybe Facebook selectively will not trigger any warnings, because they are in risk of damaging user experience of normal users.
Right, just kind of why mobile tends to be a little bit easier to use with Facebook and less triggers. Yeah. Everyone's connecting to the same cell tower. It's the same idea.
Yes, absolutely. And also they have high risk tolerance towards mobile phones. You cannot really hack a mobile phone to have unique mobile profiles. We actually thought about doing this, but this is such a difficult challenge. You basically have a phone and multiple phones inside a phone. We thought about this. It's kind of idea in the air, but that would be a bomb, but yet not possible.
would there be any advantage to creating a browser session from, I know you offer the different types of browsers and now you offer mobile. Creating the browser session with the mobile version, does that give any advantages over doing the traditional methods?
So with the mobile, it's quite tricky. Yes, so we've released Android version, and it like websites, if they try really hard, I'm just going to be honest, they can spot some differences. If they really try, I'm just going to be honest, yes. Because as I said, like most of the phones run on Linux. And you should basically, if you want a really good phone emulation, that you would have to run it on Linux, but that's impractical. However, there is a really good way how you can utilize mobile phones, like Android in Multilogin, is that to have, if you have an account, let's say on Mimic, on Chrome-based browser, and you have an account, and you'll go ahead and like manage that account. You love that account, it works. You can make a counterpart, even with the same IP address and same proxy, and create a mobile version. And that would signify to user that to Facebook that you have a session logged in a mobile phone and in a desktop application, which is a very, very typical scenario.
Right. So would that theoretically could provide better conditions for trust with Facebook, correct?
Yes. And this is somewhat been proven. In some use cases, it works. In some cases, we found that it didn't add a difference. But in some cases, it did add. With the same team that we are working, they also noticed like these accounts where if they were like managed previously in mobile, they kind of like ads are spent longer.
Interesting. I'll test it.
Ads are spent longer. Yes. Yeah. Please.
I can't thank you guys enough. I'm a big fan. I'm a user. I'll keep shouting from the mountaintops about your software. Just want to thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And I hope that this brings a lot of goodwill back your guys' way, and keep doing what you're doing, man. I'd love to have you on again in the future as you make any updates.
Thanks very much, John. Can I just give one best practice before I go?
Please.
I would highly suggest at this point in time to go, if you're using Multilogin, to go ahead into account preferences. And over there, you should be able to locate a setting called strict mode. Please enable that. What essentially strict mode does, maybe you will get slightly older user agents and versions, but the consistency between the browser version that we have and the user agent you will get will be the same, and websites will not find an inconsistency. I would suggest to try. Yes.
What's that under?
So go to on which version you're right now?
I should be on the latest version. Let me check.
Luna 6.0.2.
Oh no! I'm on 5.18.
Right. But 5.1.8.
Yeah, 5.18.1.2.
That's the latest stable, but that's fine. Latest stable. So you need to go to My Account.
Yep.
Preferences.
Okay.
Scroll down, strict mode.
And what will this do?
So essentially, when you create a profile, we kind of add a bit of diversity of user agents. So there will be like 95, 96 to have a bit of distinction. But it will only produce you those user agents which are in correspondence with the latest version of Mimic that we have. Yes, you might get a user agent which are slightly older, but that is not necessarily bad. Right. We see that even if you have user agents that, of course, it's always better to have the latest one, and we are actually updating browser cores quite fast. In the latest version, you already have a more newer Mimic, but it will ultimately remove a possibility for Facebook to detect inconsistency in version. We didn't find this specific consistency check in Facebook. We didn't find this, but we know that LinkedIn does it, PayPal does it, and eBay does this. So just by, you never know what they do. So you kind of use clues, you use signals to try and provide best practices.
Super cool, man. Just turned it on. Appreciate you guys.
Nice.
All right, brother. Well, thank you again for your time. I'll let you know when this goes live, and we're live now, but I'll let you know when this goes up. And yeah, if there's anything you guys need my help on in any way, just always feel free to reach out.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
No worries. Thank you.
Bye.